Course. Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning. Robin, imagine this. Just imagine that you're walking down the street, just minding your own business, right? And somebody comes up to you and they say, Robin, could you help me out? And you say, well, what do you need help with? Well, there's a young person in the juvenile detention center, and this young person has been arrested, and I know you have some wisdom. Can you talk to this young person and maybe prevent him from ever becoming the hardened criminal that a lot of these young people will become eventually, right? Or something. I'm trying to paint a little picture here. But my point is that you're being asked to go and intervene in somebody's life, and the only tool you have will be your words. The only tool you'll have will be your words that are connected to your heart, your wisdom, your experience, right?
Yeah.
Now you sit down with this young person and you maybe discuss what's going on, what's happening, but they have to be ready to hear what you have to say. And we'll assume, for the sake of the story, that the person who recruited you to do this knows that you've got some kind of insightful way about you that can help out this person. There was a story, I was hearing about where there was this guy who was helping out people with, I think, his musical skills or something like that. It's not related exactly to this, but his wife said to him, why don't you write a book and help out a lot of people? So if somebody came to you to do this one thing, and you could do this is actually something you could pull off, which I don't think I could pull off. I'd be sitting there with the kid going, I don't know, what's the matter with you? What'd you do that for?
That's right.
Straighten up. I don't know what I would tell him, but somebody who's calmer than me, somebody who's got some understanding and some grasp and some wisdom probably could do this. And if you write a book, then you can help a lot more people. That's exactly what our next guest did. And it sounds like it's exactly who she is. Milan Hollister is on the phone. It sounds like she's really making a huge contribution to the future by stepping in and stopping some of those people who might take the wrong path and maybe head down a better path, be a happier person, and in the long run actually help all of us. Mm-hmm. Milan is and I probably should be addressing her as Dr. Milan. She's a therapist, a teacher, a spiritual counselor. You probably figured that out already. And she herself went through some trauma back in her childhood, it says here. I don't know the details. We'll ask her if she wants to share that with us or not. But she's written a book. It's called Back to the Basics, 5 Core Values Revitalized. And let's say good morning to her, Dr. Milan Hollister. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. That was a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Where are you right now?
I am in Chicago at the moment. I will be here for another 11 days, and then I'm moving on to complete a book tour for the summer.
Wow. How long has the book been out?
Officially, it just came out in the stores on the 23rd of June, but it's been out for a couple months now in like the launch phase. So
I'm wondering if one of these days, maybe not yet because it's so young, so it's such a new book, but I'm wondering if one of these days you're going to get a letter from an inmate, whether juvenile or otherwise, who you turn around, or maybe somebody who is thinking of doing themselves in or something. I'm guessing you're going to get those kinds of letters.
Interesting. I actually did work in a level 5 juvenile facility many moons ago, and it's interesting that you say words, and words actually only account for a very small part of how we communicate with people, a very small part actually. So really what we have to model with regard to children, and when you're working with children, is they have to, first of all, they have to feel that you really genuinely care, and you have to, it's that heart connection, and it's like you said, it's the love. So with kids that are like that, they need to know that you're right in there with them. You can talk till you're blue in the face to anybody, but it's really, are you modeling that change? Are you that energy?
Oh, interesting. And that rings true actually, and I'm sure you're right. So the book may work by itself, or maybe the book will work better in the hands of another therapist. Maybe even I could benefit from the book. Maybe I could, take the book and maybe learn a few things that maybe if I were in that circumstance, my little fake, fictional story that I created where somebody recruits me to help out somebody else, I wouldn't know where to start. But at least I would care. I guess my starting point would be from the caring perspective.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Back to the Basics is a great way. Well, and I also have another book series called The Adventures of Night, which is for children. And each of the books do cover human values, regardless of what you're reading. But with anything that we do in life, we need a starting point. We need something that we can look to, someone to look to, a book, some direction. And then it's after that we start to live with life experience. That's how we really learn. We learn with our life experience. But absolutely, we need something to start us. We need something to go, okay, wait a minute, that makes sense. All right, now how do I move forward? And Back to the Basics does have some very simple tools that you can use to reintegrate these values back into your life, or help someone else reintegrate them back into someone else's life.
And the person that's seeking the help may not look for help within the family. They might go outside, go to their church, go to a classmate, something like that. Yes.
And Back to the Basics is for everybody, because we all innately have these 5 core values within us. This is ancient wisdom. I would love to say that I've come up with a new concept: love, truth, peace, right conduct, and nonviolence, but I can't. They've been around for a while now. I'm just reminding people that they're there. And if we can go back to the root of these values, we're going to do so much better.
In a discussion that we had maybe a month or so ago with an author coach, a lady who coaches people who want to be authors, one of the things she said that I wanted to bring into this conversation was that if you're creating a protagonist who is a strong protagonist, he's the spy who's the James Bond guy, he's always going to be tough and he's not going to take no for an answer. The one trick that works for a lot of people is when there's somebody else in his life who shows another side to him, it kind of makes him more personable. So if you have James Bond's mother, all of a sudden James Bond is not the same James Bond that but there's one person in the story who turns, okay, so let's take a real person in the real world, let's say a general in the army or something, he's got this hardcore but he's got troubles too, and he's got issues too. How do you get through to him with these 5 basic core values?
Well, it's exactly what you said. We don't want to share too much with people, but we definitely want, and I laugh as I say that because I shared quite a bit in my book about my own story. But, personalizing things and letting people know, hey, we've all had, I don't care who you are, we've all had some trouble and strife in our lives. It just happens. To what degree and how that impacts us is all relative. But definitely making a personal connection with people is a good way to start and let them know, hey, I feel you, I'm with you. I've had this situation. It gives us a heart connection to start. But what I tell people, and I tell this to little kids, life is like a test. And if you get the first value right, and that's love, because it's the seed, it's the underpinning of all the other values, you get all the other values right. You automatically pass the test. If you get the first one wrong, you fail the rest of the test. It's just how life is. Love is the seed, it's the core, it's the root of the values, and it will move you very easily into the other 4 core values.
And those children have to learn the value of genuine love, because sometimes people pretend to love them and they don't really.
Yes. And we've become a society where we use the word love in this very abstract, arbitrary, crazy kind of way. We use it as symbols. I heart you. It's on a sliding scale. I love you today on a 5, but I love the deep dish pizza on an 8, or whatever sports team. We can't use people in this kind of way. People need to always be at the top of that scale, not even on the scale. They shouldn't even be on the scale. They should be off the scale, and it should be an unconditional place where we honor people. But we're not doing that. We're using them interchangeably with stuff. And people and human emotions they're not shoes.
I wonder why. I wonder why we're doing that. I don't know if it's something new, or has it been throughout humanity that we've done that, or you would think we would become more civilized, and I think some people are. I think you are. I think you are an example of that. If you were living in another time, maybe 1,000 years ago or more, you might be considered a religious leader because of what you're saying. And in fact, some of the core values you outline are my favorite part of religion. I thought this the other day. Now, just for everybody, I do believe in God, but I don't think I need religion. I really don't, because I know enough to not hurt people. I know enough to behave. I know enough. You know what I mean? So I don't really need somebody to teach me to not hurt people. But the part that I get something from in religion is not the stuff that tells you what you should eat or what you shouldn't eat or that kind of stuff. It's the part about how to treat other people. Mm-hmm. That's the part that I take away.
It goes back to the golden rule.
Yeah, I think so. So can we cross that line that I'm a little bit reluctant to cross and ask you about your personal circumstance? It says here you had a traumatic childhood.
I did. It was every form of abuse. It was neglect. It was very tumultuous, and it was something that I know this sounds crazy, but I wouldn't change it, because it's very Steve Jobs, when he did that big Stanford speech. And he says you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. Right. And each experience that we have in life, we can either take it and we can become a victim and say, oh my God, woe is me, my life, I'm going to go in the garden and eat worms. Or we can say, okay, this happened to me. It was an opportunity, it was a lesson, it was something, and it's made me a stronger person. But we forget that. We forget that we are the essence of love, and that everything that happens to us is, it is what it is. It's not pleasant. It doesn't mean that it was right. Nothing that happened to me was okay. It's not okay to hurt people. It's, it's the nonviolence. It's love. You're not supposed to do that to your children.
Right, absolutely.
Today, it's the essence of who I am, and it's made me a stronger person, and it made me search and figure out, okay, this wasn't okay, but how can I be a better person? And if we can take our lessons and we can use them to strengthen ourselves, then we are going to do far more, far better than if we were just to say, well, I'm a victim in my life, and oh gosh. So.
Do you know the other extreme to that, or the other side of that, I guess, is let me use a man who ran for sheriff's office in our community, who has become an upstanding citizen, but years ago he was a felon. But my point is that the person who abused, and I'm not saying he was an abuser, I shouldn't have made his reference in connection with this, but anybody who's done something wrong is just as much at a place where you need to connect the dots, if that person is going to progress, as the person who had something done wrong to them. It's just that we have more empathy for the victim than we do for the abuser. We don't have empathy for an abuser, but at the same time, whatever they did, whatever they went through, they have a dot too that connects to something else.
Absolutely. And it's when I talk to kids about bullying, that's actually a point that I bring up. I say, hey, you guys want to know a secret? And of course they're like, yeah, I want to know a secret. and I say to them, you know what? People who hurt because they feel hurt, because someone's hurt them. Something's happening. And instead of lashing out at them, we need to give them love. We need to have empathy. And they kind of look at me. Of course, you can always kind of see the bullies in the crowd because they kind of shrink a little bit. But it is what it is. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I know this is going to be super fun. I'm going to go hurt a bunch of people. We don't wake up with that thought.
Right.
It happens because we're angry, we're stressed, we're confused. It goes to, the core and the essence of violence, and not knowing how to use our words instead of properly and express ourselves, because violence with words is a big piece to violence. It's not just hitting or physical altercation.
And that leads into truth, because there are so many people out there that when things aren't going well in their lives, they're constantly blaming other people and never looking that they are the one to blame.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking accountability is a huge word that we use when we talk to kids about truth. And it's so important. And I understand there's two kinds of truth. There's the infinite truth and the abstract truth. And the abstract truth changes from moment to moment. So we talk to kids about what you believe now is not going to be the same in 5 minutes. You're sitting here, and then 5 minutes from now, you're not going to be sitting here. You have to think about that. And we talk about people's signatures, what we see in somebody, and that example of, have you ever met somebody that you thought was super cool, and then you spent a little time with them and you're like, ooh, they're not so cool? Or the kid that you thought wasn't cool and you spent a little time with them and you're like, this is the greatest person ever.
Right.
Our changes change. Our truth changes. And so I try to teach people not to lock into any one particular truth, because there is an infinite truth, and that's a whole different topic, but that abstract truth, don't lock into it, because you'd be surprised. Things change.
Dr. Milan Hollister is our guest. Her book is called Back to the Basics. You have an interesting biography yourself. Is your story included in the book?
Yes, it is. It is actually the first part of the book. It leads you into how I came to understand the 5 core values, and it was through a lot of travel. I've lived in 15 different states. I have and countless cities. I have traveled around the world. I've been to 14 different countries.
Wow.
I've lived in 5. The numbers are a little blurry this morning, but I've done quite a bit of soul searching.
You got up early, huh?
Yeah.
Can I ask you this? Do you think anybody could ever sit down? See, you can't go back in time. It's a stupid question to ask if you could, but what about now? What about the potential Hitler, the person who could become the next Hitler? Could somebody sit down with that person and say, look, you're a little bit overboard here. You got to learn how to love.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to treat people with nonviolence. Do you think we could prevent some of that if we could ever get these lessons out there?
That's a very interesting thing, and I do bring Hitler up in my book. And, Hitler, there is a seed of good in everybody. And I know people aren't going to want to hear that about Hitler, but here are 2 interesting facts about Hitler. He died, when his canary died, he was distraught. Absolutely distraught when his bird died. And he was also a vegetarian, which, if you think about those 2 little things, they're just little things. But
so, in other words, don't trust vegetarian canary owners.
That's right.
If you're Jewish, stay away from them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. No, I'm just to the core of all of us, there's something good. And so the answer to your question is yes. I think if we can get to the core of what's good in people and go back to those 5 core values, we really can change. But unless we do that, we're on a path to I don't even want to think about it. So
yeah, I know,
and got to go back.
And I don't think we're evolving at the same rate. I think some of us are more primitive than others, and I think some of the least primitive among us hold some of the highest positions in the world.
Yes.
It just seems like that way. Look at this guy in North Korea. Right, look at the leaders of these ISIS groups over in Iraq right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's crazy. It's like some of the highest ranking people among us are the least civilized.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. We have to look at our media too. Look at the kinds of shows that are on television and what we gravitate to just as a people. It's like I don't have a television, so I haven't been watching television for 10 years. But I hear about these shows, and from time to time, I'll see little clips and so on and so forth. And there's or even the movies that are coming out. If people didn't gravitate towards those things, film producers wouldn't make any money off a horror film.
Yeah, right.
Do you think that there are too many rules? Because sometimes with more rules, common sense just flies out the window.
there's a fine line there, because obviously we need rules to keep a society in check. But are we making those rules based on values? And are the values good for you, or are the values good for everybody? And that's the core of right conduct. When we make a choice, are we making a choice that's good for ourselves, or is the choice good for everybody? And I don't know that rules are always made with the collective in mind.
So if I'm walking down the street and some stranger asks me to go speak to somebody sitting in a cell somewhere, I'm going to say, you got the wrong person. You need Milan Hollister. Let me get you her book.
That's right.
I don't know if she's available, but the book is available, and it'll help you with this. The book is called Back to the Basics, 5 Core Values Revitalized. I love that. It's absolutely true. Hey, it is worth reminding ourselves of these things. You never know who you're going to reach and who you're going to help, and just by saying something, but by putting it into a book, it's unlimited what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have the books for children, The Adventures of Meg, because it's not just adults that need this, but we need to reach our kids at a very early age. So I've got a great series of books for kids that address all the 5 values as well.
Oh, and what are they called? The Adventures of Meg?
The Adventures of Meg, yes. And Belissa's New Party Dress is the recent one that has just come out, and that is also available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Reaching out to the children really helps the adults see things in perspective, because sometimes the adults will act kind of goofy and they won't think when they do things, but once they see a child do that, that child might be their mirror.
Absolutely. And I tell that is one of the biggest things. I teach child psychology and child development. That's one of my jobs. And I tell people, you are going to model that behavior. Do not be surprised when a child comes and says something, and then you're like, well, where did they hear that?
Yeah,
really. Do you know?
Or the society.
Dads sometimes get the bad rap. We're the inferior parent. But I'm not trying to dwell on that. But I heard a dad one time say something when his first child was born. It's a friend, and he said, Larry, suddenly everything's important. And I thought, well, that's a cool line. Suddenly everything's important. It's like, well, up until this point, it didn't matter what I did.
That's right.
Now everything is important.
I better behave now.
Yeah, better behave. Love, truth, peace, right conduct, and nonviolence seem to be familiar values that have been that other teachers have tried to teach us in the past. Milan Hollister is doing it now with her book, Back to the Basics. Milan, thank you for being on the air with us today. It was a fun interview.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. It was great.
And before we say goodbye, can you mention a website or how else we get the book? I know you can do it in bookstores.
Well, you can also go on to Meg's Friends. It's Meg, MEGS, Friends.com, and that will give you some information about the children's books. And then MilanHollister.com will give you a link to both. And Milan is like the Italian city, Milan, and Hollister, HOLLISTER.com.
Okay, and is there another one, Back to the Basics?
There is, but it's a bit complicated. It all links to each other, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
But there is a Back to the Basics website as well.
Okay.
But Milan Hollister will get you what you need.
Well, Milan, thank you so much for getting up early and for being on the air with us. But the bigger thank you is for what you're doing. I really think you are making a difference for the world. Maybe somebody will pick it up and learn from the book themselves, or maybe somebody who was a teacher will pick it up, or a counselor, and help somebody else with the message that you have in the book. Thank you for that, and thank you for being on the air with us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great.
And remember that love connects us all.
Yes, it does.
That.
Yes, it does. All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be right back.
Get it for less at the DIY Home Center outlet. Get top quality real wood cabinets the same or less than the big box stores are selling the cheap stuff. And that's not all. Drywall screws big box stores are $6.47 a pound. At DIY, only $4.99. Plus, DIY has the largest selection of mobile home parts and accessories anywhere. From carpet to doors, get the DIY supplies you need for less. The DIY Home Center outlet. We are your building material closeout store. 2191 Northwest 10th Street, just 2 miles east of I-75.
Hi, I'm Leah Caruso with Strive Rehabilitation, inviting you to join me Thursday at 11 a.m. for Health Matters. Ocala Health and Strive have teamed up to bring you the latest information on good health services available to you right here at home. This vital information will help you make informed decisions about your health. So don't forget to join me here at 11 a.m. Thursday. It's news you can use from Ocala Health, Strive, and your friends here at WOCA.
Now is the time to take advantage of Florida Credit Union's CD specials. Our 36-month CD comes in at 1.26% APY. A 24-month is working for you at 1.0% APY. And our 12-month at 0.75% APY. All CD rate specials require $10,000 minimum. With friendly service and rates like these, it's not hard to see why Florida Credit Union has your CD options covered. Florida Credit Union, connecting your money to your life. Call 352-237-8222 for more information. Must act by 1/15/14.
Fox News Radio, I'm Karen McHugh. A decision expected from the Supreme Court could impact a controversial provision of Obamacare. Must employer-based health plans cover an employee's contraception costs?
The White House and pro-choice organizations say for-profit employers should not be able to dictate health care decisions of employees. Religious rights groups counter the mandate is an affront to the free exercise clause of the Constitution. Arguments back in March suggest a potentially split decision.
Fox Radio's Jared Halpern. Heavy fighting reported on the Syria-Iraq border. In areas Sunni militants are now calling their own.
The city of Tikrit has become the center of much of the fighting in recent days, with U.S. military advisors playing what an official has described